This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. When Carrie Underwood entered the courtroom, no one expected what she was about to say. For months, rumors had swirled. A mysterious medical emergency, cryptic Instagram posts, silence from friends, and whispers that someone was trying to end her. But now, under oath and in front of the world, Carrie is breaking it all open. The clerk's voice cut through the tense air of the courtroom as she addressed the witness. "Please state your full name for the record." Carrie's voice, familiar to millions from her years as a chart-topping American singer, carried a quiet strength despite the weight of the moment. "My name is Carrie Marie Underwood." The prosecutor, a woman with a measured tone, stepped forward. "Ms. Underwood, thank you for being here today. The court recognizes you as a well-known singer and public figure. But today, you're here as a witness in the trial of Sean Combs Diddy, who is currently facing charges of sex trafficking, abuse, and related allegations brought forth by Cassie Ventura and several other women. Can you please tell the court why you've chosen to testify in this case?" Carrie's words were steady, her tone reflecting the gravity of the situation. "I'm here because I have a story to share that I believe is relevant to this trial. I've been following the allegations against Mr. Combs, Diddy, for a long time, ever since Cassie Ventura first shared her own experiences with me back in 2106, when we met at private party arranged by Diddy. She told, she will visit my home. Then she changed the topic of the discussion as she fears someone could listen. And now I am here to testify upcoming event that shattered me from inside. I'm known for my music, but I'm also a woman who's seen the darker side of this industry. What happened to me when I tried to help Cassie is something I've kept silent about for too long, out of fear. But seeing Diddy on trial now, facing these charges of sex trafficking and abuse, I knew I had to come forward. I want to support Cassie and the other women who've spoken out, and I want the truth to be heard." The prosecutor nodded, her voice encouraging. "Let's start from the beginning, Ms. Underwood. Can you tell the court how you first became aware of Cassie Ventura's allegations against Mr. Combs?" Carrie's voice softened, a mix of empathy and resolve. "I've known Cassie for years, ever since we crossed paths in the music industry. She's a talented artist, but more than that, she's a kind person. Around the time I turned 33, I started noticing something was wrong. I'd see her at events, and she seemed different, distant, like she was carrying a heavy burden. I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd always say she was fine, but I could tell she wasn't. Then, one day, she called me. Her voice was trembling, and she said she needed to talk. She told me about the painful time she was going through with Diddy. She said he'd been abusive, emotionally, physically, and that she was scared. She didn't know how to escape him." The prosecutor interjected gently. "Can you share what specific details Cassie Ventura confided in you about her relationship with Mr. Combs?" Carrie's tone grew heavy with sorrow. "She told me things that broke my heart. She said Diddy would get angry, sometimes for no reason, and he'd lash out at her. She described how he'd scream at her, call her names, make her feel worthless. And then there were the physical things. She said he'd hurt her, left bruises on her body. She was too afraid to show me, but she told me they were there, hidden under her clothes. She said he'd made it clear that if she ever tried to leave or tell anyone, he'd destroy her career. She felt trapped, especially because of his influence in the industry. I knew Diddy was powerful, everyone in music knows that, but I didn't realize how far that power could go until Cassie told me her story." The prosecutor's voice remained calm. "And how did you respond to hearing these allegations from Ms. Ventura?" Carrie's words carried a mix of determination and regret. I was horrified. I've been in this industry a long time, and I've heard rumors about Diddy before, but hearing it from Cassie made it real. I told her I'd help her however I could. I said she didn't have to go through this alone, that we could find a way to get her out of that situation, maybe even get her story to someone who could protect her. I didn't know much about the legal system, but I knew she needed support. What I didn't realize was how dangerous that decision would be, not just for her, but for me. The prosecutor nodded. What steps did you take to help Ms. Ventura after that conversation? Carrie's voice tightened as she continued. Cassie and I decided to meet at my house one night. She said she had proof of the abuse, documents, maybe even photos, that she wanted me to see. She thought if I saw them, I could help her figure out what to do next, maybe help her go public or get to the authorities. I told her to come over at 10 p.m., when I knew it'd be quiet at my place. That night, I was waiting for her, feeling nervous but ready to support her. When she arrived, I opened the main door, and I could see how terrified she was. Her hands were shaking, and she kept looking over her shoulder, like she thought someone was following her. The prosecutor's tone remained focused. What happened after Ms. Ventura arrived at your house? Carrie's voice trembled slightly as she recalled the events. As soon as I let her in, we noticed something strange. There was a car parked across the street from my house. The windows were tinted, and the music coming from it was loud, really aggressive, the kind that makes your stomach turn. Then, just as I was about to close the door, the music started to fade, like someone was turning it down slowly. A moment later, it stopped completely. The silence felt worse than the noise. Cassie grabbed my hand, her grip so tight it hurt, and she whispered, "They're here." I didn't know who she meant at first, but I could feel her fear. I pulled her inside and took her to my room, trying to keep her calm. The prosecutor prompted her to continue. What did you do next, Ms. Underwood? Carrie's voice steadied as she went on. I told Cassie to stay in my room while I went to the kitchen to make us some chocolate coffee. I thought it might help her relax, give us a moment to talk about the proof she'd brought. She was still holding her bag tightly, the one she said had the evidence in it. I'd only been in the kitchen for a few minutes when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was my security guard. He screamed, this awful panicked scream. It sounded like someone was trying to break into my house. I dropped the mug I was holding, and it shattered on the floor. My heart was racing so fast, I couldn't think straight. The prosecutor's voice remained even. What did you do when you heard that scream? Carrie's words came faster now, the fear from that night seeping into her tone. I ran back to my room where Cassie was. She was already standing, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. She knew exactly who it was. She said, "It's them, Diddy's people. He sends them when someone goes against him." I didn't have time to process what she meant. I just knew I had to get her out of there. I told her to leave through the back door, the one that leads to the alley behind my house. She hesitated, but I insisted. I said, "Go, Cassie, I'll handle this." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and slipped out the back just as I heard the front door being forced open. The prosecutor asked, "What happened after Ms. Ventura left?" Carrie's voice grew quieter, the memory clearly painful. I turned around, and there they were. 3 men, all in dark clothes, their faces hard and angry. They stormed into my living room, and I tried to stand my ground. I asked them what they wanted, but they didn't answer. One of them grabbed me and pushed me hard. I stumbled and fell onto my sofa, my breath knocked out of me. They started yelling, "Where is she? Where'd you hide her?" I tried to stay calm, even though I was shaking. I said, "Who are you talking about? I'm here alone. You've got the wrong house." But they didn't believe me. They kept yelling, calling me a liar. One of them pushed me again, harder this time, and I fell back onto the sofa. I was terrified, but I kept telling myself I couldn't let them know Cassie had been there. The prosecutor's tone softened slightly. "How did that confrontation end, Ms. Underwood?" Carrie's voice wavered as she continued. "After a few minutes of yelling and searching my house, they seemed to realize Cassie wasn't there. They gave me one last glare, and one of them said, 'You better hope we don't find her.' Then they left, slamming the door behind them. I ran to the door and locked it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. I thought it was over, that I was safe. But I was wrong." The prosecutor pressed gently. "What happened next?" Carrie's voice dropped to a near whisper, the fear from that moment palpable. "I was standing there, trying to catch my breath, when I heard a knock on the door. It was sharp, deliberate. I froze. I didn't know who it could be, but I had this sinking feeling it wasn't over. I went to the door, my heart racing, and opened it just a crack. Standing there was a man in a black suit, wearing a black mask that covered half his face. He had 2 bodyguards with him, both of them huge, intimidating. Before I could say anything, they pushed the door open and forced their way inside. One of the bodyguards grabbed me, his hands like a vice around my arms. The other one held me by the neck, so tight I could barely breathe. I screamed, but it didn't matter. The man in the mask just stood there, watching." The prosecutor's voice remained steady. "What did the man in the mask say to you?" Carrie's words came out in a rush, the terror still fresh. He leaned in close, his voice low and cold. He said, "We came to warn you. Stay away from her, or you'll be erased." I was trembling, trying to speak, but I could barely get the words out. I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." But he just laughed, this chilling laugh, and said, "You know exactly what I mean. Stay away from Cassie, or you'll regret it." Then he nodded to the bodyguards, and they let me go. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air as they walked out. I locked the door again, but I didn't feel safe. I was alone, terrified, and I didn't know what to do. The prosecutor nodded. "What happened in the days and weeks following that night?" Carrie's voice grew heavy with regret. "I tried to reach out to Cassie. I waited 2 weeks, hoping things would calm down, but I couldn't stop worrying about her. I called her, but her phone was off. I tried again the next week, and this time she answered. But she was different, cold, distant. She said, 'I don't want to meet with you, and I have nothing to share.' I knew something was wrong. She'd been so desperate to tell me her story before, but now she was shutting me out. I had this awful feeling that Diddy had gotten to her, that she was too scared to speak. I felt so helpless, so guilty, that I couldn't protect her." The prosecutor asked, "Did you have any further contact with Mr. Combs or his associates after that night?" Carrie's tone darkened. "The very next day after I spoke to Cassie, I got a message on my phone. It was from an unknown number, but the words made my blood run cold. It said, 'This is your last warning. Stay away, or you'll be erased.' And then it said, 'We'll kill you, or we'll kill your family.' I was so scared. I didn't know who to turn to. I thought about going to the police, but I was terrified of what might happen if I did. I'd already seen what Diddy's people were capable of, so I stayed silent. For years, I kept this to myself, too afraid to speak out. But now, with this trial and the charges against Diddy, sex trafficking, abuse, all of it, I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. He needs to face what he's done, not just to me, but to Cassie and the other women who've come forward." The prosecutor's voice softened with empathy. Ms. Underwood, thank you for sharing that. Before we conclude, is there anything else you'd like to say to the court? Carrie's voice grew stronger, her words carrying a fierce conviction. Yes, there is. That night, and everything that happened after, made me realize something important. I'm a singer, someone who's been lucky enough to have a platform, but I'm also a woman who's seen how power can be used to silence others. In a country like America, where we're supposed to be free, women like Cassie and I shouldn't feel so helpless. No one should have to live in fear of speaking out. I stayed silent for too long because I was scared, but I'm done being scared. I want every woman out there to hear this. If you're in a relationship, any kind of relationship, and you're facing abuse or physical assault, you have to report it. Don't worry about what might happen, because if you don't speak up, if you keep bearing it, you're not really living. You're just a walking, talking shell, moving on someone else's terms. There's no life if your will isn't your own. Be strong. Identify the abuse and fight back. Because you deserve to live, truly live, on your own terms. The prosecutor's voice was respectful as she concluded. Thank you, Ms. Underwood. No further questions. The narration shifted as Inner City Press summarized the impact of the testimony. Carrie Underwood's words left the courtroom in stunned silence. Known to the world as a beloved American singer, her testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, where he faces allegations of sex trafficking and abuse from Cassie Ventura and other women, carried a weight few could have anticipated. Her account of that terrifying night, the break-in, the threats, and her plea for women to stand against abuse resonated deeply. Inner City Press reports that her testimony marked a turning point in the trial. The prosecution, already working to connect the dots between Diddy and his alleged network of intimidation, now had a powerful new lead. Carrie's story pointed to a man in a black mask, a figure who might hold the key to unraveling Diddy's dirty play. With this testimony, it seemed the prosecution was one step closer to reaching the other members of Diddy's inner circle, bringing the trial to a critical juncture.